And the U.S. has been looking for a base in Africa and been up till now basically unable to get one for their AFRICOM to combat Chinese access to raw materials. Africa is not in the U.S. sphere of influence at this time. Not technically in terms of military assistance. In the current crisis, the Islamist, Salafist, Cyrenaicans wanted Gaddafi gone, but many, even in Benghazi, now wonder what they have traded it for. Libya was a peaceful country. You could drive around freely. Now each city has its own militia. Could you imagine traveling in a highly ethnically charged atmosphere like that? The Obama administration, if it looked strong on defense, could manipulate the voters on the right to vote for him. Is that the issue? A cheap victory in Libya would bring him into a strong position in the election. Couldn't we salve our consciences, lying to ourselves? Have we saved tens of thousands of lives, as Susan Rice and Hilary Clinton claimed? I'm certain that the intervention into Benghazi would have, had we not done it, would have been a few hundred lives, and we could have done that and no more. So we have definitely increased the level of violence in Libya substantially over having not intervened. It's in a way, Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice said, Gaddafi, stop killing your own people, but because killing people is a NATO monopoly in the conjunction with their allies Al Qaeda, apparently, in Libya at any rate. What will happen to all the rich and powerful in our arms industry and in surveillance and any terrorism if we do not fuel these conflicts? Do you know how much money has been larded out in inefficient contracts of largely zero utility? That's when I referred to the Department of Homeland Security. If we don't keep an enemy out there to fight, we recruit for Al Qaeda by killing people all over the world by the bushel. What is going on in Libya today? Does it portend a brighter future for Libya? Will being forcibly converted into an Iraq-like state eventually help the people? To decide that, you have to know the real past of Libya. And it was quite different from the stereotypical view given by Western media that virtually never had been to Libya, though travel in and out of Libya was increasing. For those who did not have a way to control their own affairs or have a voice in Gaddafi's Libya, for whom a chance at political expression would make years of degraded living condition and violence hundreds of times greater than prior to the NATO-sponsored overthrow of the Libyan Jamahiriya created by Gaddafi. For those people, this is definitely worth it. For Gaddafi supporters, it's been a horrendous nightmare, and they may exceed the number supporting NATO regime change. Certainly appears that the majority would prefer to do it without American, French, Danish, and British bombers and fighters bombing from above. Let us suppose Gaddafi sympathizers consist of a quarter to a half of the Libyan population. That means 1 to 2 million people have been severely disenfranchised out of 6 million, 1 to 3 million people. These people are not allowed to participate in politics. They're not allowed to have freedom of speech. If they are detected as being sympathetic, they can be jailed without, I don't know without trial or not. I mean, we have such ridiculous laws here now. This almost seems like something that is non-surprising because we ourselves are doing this to ourselves in some ways. Mass imprisonment without trial with widespread multiply corroborated accounts that either the majority of the thousands in prison are being tortured, or certainly thousands. If one was to sympathize with these people for a moment, you would see the irony of the Libya Islamic Fighting Group armed in violation of UN 1973 to overthrow the Libyan Jamahiriya, that the West would be anxious for their enemies to put them on trial. The potential for show trials a la Stalinism would be huge. We shall see. There's widespread lawlessness, terrorism, and still pockets of resistance from the loyalists and affiliated tribes all over the country. The tribes opposed to the winners already know they must advocate as a tribe and not as loyalists. If you were a militia and you attack another militia and it's tribal, you won't get intervention from other militias. But if it's suspected you're loyalists, the Al Qaeda, the Libya Islamic Fighting Group, and that sort of people will descend on you quickly and evaporate you. That is my speculation. Some would say this sort of oppression of the vanquished is common, such as in Nazi Germany. But Libya was not an aggressor state, and the overthrow took so much aid from the West that it frankly has a tenuous claim on legitimacy. And by prohibiting Gaddafi supporters, they ensure we will never know if they have a mandate, and in case they may not, by simple logic. In other words, if you refuse, if you're afraid of letting other people run against you, and you create elections that only allows people you approve to run, does that not mean that you are afraid that you don't even have the legitimacy to win the election? And we will never know if they had a mandate if they do this, because they can continue to consolidate, control, and influence, and eventually erase the memory of the Jamahiriya, just as in Orwell, he who controls the past controls the future. And he who controls the present controls the past. They have NATO and the Gulf ready to supply them with limitless firepower. What do they have to fear? Yet they fear a loyalist even making the squeak of a mouse. You should hear the Churchill speech about the peep of a mouse. How dictators can't stand to hear even a word said against them because their whole mirage collapses. And I'm trying to allow you to draw the conclusions, but I want you to think about these factors and look at these issues. Then there is the tragic case of Saif al-Islam al-Gadaffi. In the case of Saif al-Islam, two of his brothers were gruesomely murdered. One of them killed in cold blood, the other bombed by NATO. And one executed after capture. A niece and nephew were murdered by the bombing by NATO. His father was basically sodomized with a bayonet to death. His own fingers, Saif al-Islam's, are blown off by a drone. He's been abused in prison. He signaled to the few people who have met with him and pointed to a chipped tooth and so forth. We don't know to what degree, but he has been abused in prison. A reformist, he was the main reformist in that circle. And then of course there was Musa Ibrahim. He was a reformist who freed the very people who killed his father. He created a rapprochement with the Libya Independent Islamic Fighting Group and released many of them from prison, most of them, I think virtually all of them, ironically. And perhaps that's why he's alive, because although they want him jailed, maybe they don't want to kill him because he released them originally. I don't know. These people now seek to lay their hands on Saif, and I'm sure many of them would be tempted to murder him, to silence their own consciences about the unlawful and violent way they collaborated with traditionally foreign colonial enemies to overthrow their peaceful government and create a state rife with civil war, terror, militias, torture camps, freedom of speech banned, the finance minister resigned because of corruption, huge amounts of money larded out to American, Qatari, and European contractors to essentially quid pro quo pay them back for having bombed the Libyan government out of existence. I call upon all viewers to register their opposition to allowing Saif al-Islam Gadaffi to stay in this extremely dangerous situation. We should have, although I don't want to target on celebrities, we should have sympathy for this man. He freed these people who tried to reform his country, and it's absurd for the perpetrators of all this murder to be allowed to lay their hands on him to create a show trial. And please, I would like everyone to send letters to the International Criminal Court, collaborate with people that are trying to file suit against NATO for their action at The Hague, because NATO's headquartered there and they are signatories to the ICC. So if these people managed to kill Saif al-Islam, they would be able to sleep a bit more soundly with all of the blood on their hands. Now, again, this is speculation. I'm not saying that the new Libya won't turn out nicely. I do believe that the West was utterly hypocritical to kill the #2 guy from the Libyan opposition in Pakistan and not even clearly make the linkage. My name is Alexander Hagen. Good night and good luck.